Let's put our videos off, guys.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this day for a featured educational webinar with the New York City Hospitality Group. My name is Derek Sherman. I'm director of the NYCHG. Today we'll be led by Nandu Awatramani, NYCHG member and owner of F&B Business School, who, if you haven't met Nandu, brings an incredible wealth of experience through his journey of opening and operating a multi-unit restaurant. Really understanding the tactics of Fortune 500 companies and sort of applying them to the hospitality industry. He has brought together an incredible panel of contributors to discuss how to increase revenue in this uncertain time. The New York City Hospitality Group is a unique resource made up of a combination of hospitality-focused professionals that represent the various essential services to operate a successful hospitality organization. This diagram shows the dynamic collection that ranges in services from concept to real estate to build out, professional services to operations and more. On behalf of New York City Hospitality Group and this educational webinar, we will be contributing a $300 donation to Food and Finance, the Food and Finance High School, which I'll bring up. And we just want to thank you for being here, and we want to thank you for leading us this morning. Nandu?
Thank you, Derek. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Excited to be here and lead you through an amazing conversation today. Sit back, relax, chill out, drink some coffee. Just hear what these two amazing, hardworking, really smart and sharp restaurant owners have to offer us today. Before that, thank you, Derek, for this opportunity with the New York City Hospitality Group. And I want to just share something about the Food and Finance High School that as part of the Hospitality Group donation program, they're donating $300. The New York City Food and Finance High School is the only culinary focused public high school that provides a unique educational opportunity to students and families in the community. They get acclaimed chefs, educators, and business leaders that oversee their curriculum, field trips, internships. So it couldn't be more to the ground, real stuff. Really amazing stuff they're doing there. Okay, so jumping in, feel free to put any thoughts, questions in the Q&A. The panelists will try their best to answer them. And we will have a Q&A later on. So stay on till the end, because that's when it gets really exciting, engaging. You can ask questions, the panelists will answer. And we plan to finish this webinar at sharp 1 p.m., not a second later, okay? So I'm Nandu Awatramani, like Derek introduced me. I'm a growth coach and a business advisor to ambitious restaurant owners and groups who want to grow their business despite COVID. But today, with COVID, everything has changed. Like our whole business has literally turned upside down. Everything we thought we needed to do to make more money, to grow a business, to take care of our families, to take care of our employees. Everything's like upside down. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Anxiety, overwhelm, fear, confusion take over us sometimes. And it's tough. And like anything that's tough and overwhelming, even in your personal life, what do? You say, okay, it's tough. And you take a step back. And I need to understand and soak it in and see what are the next steps I need to do, and then just take those steps. But keeping a vision in mind as to how you want things to play out in the next few months. We don't just look at the next few steps right in front of our feet, because if we're just looking down and walking, we're going to trip. And that's why it's important to have a plan in place, a plan to increase revenues. Like, how are we going to increase revenues? What do we need to do today during this time in COVID that's different? What do we need to see? What do we need to emphasize on? What are we not seeing? And that's what I'm really excited that these operators have amazing systems they've put in place to plan on how they increase revenues, so that you can go back with a structure in mind and apply it to your business and see, hey, that's how they did it. This is how I can do it. And this is what I need to do the next few steps, that clarity of the next few steps to increase revenues, because cash is the name of the game right now. We need cash. We need cash to survive the next few months. We need cash to take advantage of some opportunities, big and small, that may pop up in 2021 that who knows might add additional revenue verticals to your business, and you might do even better. Who knows? But we need to be ready for it. And therefore, you need to plan. And planning is such an important part of increasing revenues. So how do we do it? I like this book that I read a long time back, and I read it again, Zappos. I don't know if you guys have ever read it, but it's by the person who ran Zappos. They sell shoes that was sold to Amazon for $1.2 billion. And what I liked about his philosophy is that if I just had one promotional strategy, like if we have one promotional strategy for November and it didn't work in the restaurant, we'd beat ourselves up and say, oh my God, we lost 30 days, it didn't work. Versus let's have a strategy to take better decisions so that we don't beat ourselves up and we keep taking decision after decision and learning from those that didn't work, analysis of what didn't work, and then plan better forward. And so planning is actually a better decision-making strategy. And what better way to plan than to plan with your profit and loss statement? The profit is the important part. We don't want to make a loss. And so what better way to have a decision-making strategy to look at your P&L and look at what's working, what's not working. What do I do? What shouldn't I do going forward? And how do I do this? Okay, if I do this promotion, how much revenue is it going to bring and what's the cost? And is it worth doing it or not? And planning it all out and using your planning time to look into the future as a lens into the future, and then go on making better and better decisions. And this is what Carlos Suarez from the Casanella Group and Basu Ratnam from Inde Group are going to share with us on what they do every day and every month to plan better so that they can keep their focus on increasing revenues, remain hopeful during this tough time, and kick some butt. So without further ado, I want to bring up Carlos Suarez from the Casanella Group, that he owns 4 amazing restaurants in Manhattan. Carlos, can you put on? Yes, thank you. Can you hear me, Carlos?
Yeah. Hey, Nandu, how are you?
Thank you for being here, Carlos. Carlos has these 4 amazing restaurants. Carlos, I'll leave it to you to share your restaurants and a little bit about how you're doing.
Sure thing. As Nandu mentioned, have a few neighborhood restaurants here in Greenwich Village. Started with Bobo back in 2007, opened Rosemary's in 2012, Claudette in 2014, and then a pizzeria called Roey's in 2018. And much like everyone else, closed them all basically this spring, and have been reopening them over the last few months. 3 of the 4 are open. And we're all bracing ourselves for the winter.
Right. And how are you feeling in general? Like, COVID's been a tough time. So how have you must have gone through a burst of emotions in the last few months. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, definitely fatigued after the going through the roller coaster of the last few months, and feel perhaps a mixed bag of emotions still. There's enormous uncertainty, so anxiety remains. But as you mentioned, we do spend a bit of time on planning. So some of that anxiety is tempered with confidence that we've set ourselves up to navigate the months ahead. And to be honest, I'm probably much like most people on the call who are in the restaurant business. I'm an optimist, and so I'm pretty excited to explore opportunities that COVID's obviously presented us with.
Are you looking to open any more restaurants in this uncertain time?
I don't think we'd open a restaurant in this uncertainty today. We were supposed to open a restaurant last May, and of course that's been delayed. So we're looking to open that next spring, and I'm sure the uncertainty, COVID will not have completely receded at that point. So we are, in fact, correct myself, we are opening a restaurant in the uncertainty. But if there's a choice, obviously opening this fall would be really hard. But obviously possible. Plenty of people are doing it. Yeah, and obviously look forward to making plans to open projects certainly on the other side of this.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Carlos. Um, I truly believe that business is part of life, and we bring our emotions, our mental state, our mindsets, our beliefs to our work. And that influences the decisions we make, good or bad. And those decisions influence our revenues. And so over this last 8 months, have there been any mindsets or blocks that you might have changed or overcome to continue to look at the future more positively, regardless of what's happening in the industry, what you're hearing from others, for yourself, that has helped you move forward, keep positive, plan forward? Is there anything that you would be willing to share with us?
Sure. I mean, as a team, I think reopening 3 restaurants in July with very limited resources, both financial and personnel, was very tough. And I think it was a challenge for all of us to remain positive and to appreciate the opportunities that were out there for us. And I think we were able to embrace some of these opportunities. Obviously, outdoor dining is just an enormous opportunity, glaringly obvious. But the reality is that the city opened the floodgates to outdoor seating for 3 of the 4 restaurants. And one of the restaurants ended up with more seats outside than it ever had inside. So I think that October 2020 at that location was as good as if not better than October 2019. So totally unexpected. But we resolved to be as aggressive as possible with seat counts while also championing safe procedures, and took a leadership stance on COVID safety through working with you and co-founding Safe Eats, but also aggressively pursuing revenue in a responsible way.
Great. Thank you. As the months progressed, did you find that you were resisting change? Or what's the point of planning? Or I can't see the future, everything is hazy. Should I just continue going to work? What about those blocks? Or
Sure. Well, coming out of the spring, planning felt very challenging to do. And I think in June we set out a plan for the summer. Typically, obviously, we've got an annual budget, and that annual budget went by the boards in mid-March. So we didn't really have too much of a roadmap as we reopened, or we didn't have one to rely on. So we had to create one for the summer. So we looked at a 60-day period, which we felt was as far as we could see, and that was July and August. And I think even in that period, we were due to move indoors per state regulations, and that didn't happen, because of the Sun Belt surge and just general atmosphere, to be a bit more cautious. So we started with a 60-day plan. It definitely helped sharpen our focus on seat count, delivery revenue. What were the steps to take to drive off-premise revenue? So that it was a very helpful exercise. mixed results. Then in, looking at September and into the fall, we decided, let's do a really detailed September plan with a little bit more long range kind of forecasting through the end of the year. The September plan was extremely helpful. And fortunately, we've been blessed with great weather. So, we've been able to exceed many of those targets.
Nice.
And ultimately, we were relying on PPP funding through the summer and into September, recognizing that our 24-week window was closing at the end of September. So we needed to do everything we could to take advantage of those, of those funds to set ourselves up for, what we perceive to be a very challenging, next 8 to 12 months. Again, we had done some kind of, 3 scenarios. What is it going to look like, low, medium, high from September of this year through, what we feel is kind of more secure ground with better weather, April, May of next year. Like, how much cash do we need heading into the winter to survive? So that was our singular focus, coming out of the summer into September.
Nice. So planning the 60 days and now a longer term plan up till the next few months, do you feel that it gives you more confidence and clarity of the next steps you need to take?
Certainly. We all have our marching orders. We understand, on a monthly basis, what our kind of company-wide priority is. And then each of us in the leadership team, have our priorities that, all feed to that collective company-wide priority. So, we develop these priorities in advance of every month. We have a monthly meeting to discuss, obviously, last month's performance, and then to set the stage, what is the priority for this month? What are our individual priorities? What are the measurables, the key performance indicators that we're gonna keep track of on a daily basis through the course of the month, so that we can remain on track to achieve that singular company goal.
That's amazing. That's pretty detailed. It must be taking you some time to make this kind of plan, or?
To be honest, a few hours a month of good planning, I think, goes a long way.
Right.
Certainly, each member of the team is contributing to the plan. So you have your kind of department heads, whoever's running, finance, HR, marketing, operations obviously contributes to their kind of departmental plan. But because it is only a 4 or 5 week month, there's only so much you can plan or get done. So we found it to be manageable and obviously tangible,
Right.
ultimately very useful.
So I'm assuming that you make these plans in Excel and then share it somehow with your team.
Yeah, I mean, we have a workbook for kind of our senior leadership team that has our daily meeting agenda, and then these monthly meeting tabs. And
Okay.
so we all have access to it. We can all view it.
Right. That's amazing.
Collaborate on it.
That's amazing. Having a plan must be feeling like you're not shooting arrows in the dark, right? You know where you're going, what you need to do. I'm sure a plan is a plan. It comes out exact as you planned.
Yeah.
So do you think it's still wise to have a plan than to not have a plan?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah.
Now that you, before the next question is, on a personal level, how do you feel personally just having a monthly plan going forward and your team knowing what they're supposed to do? Like, how do you feel?
Sure.
As an owner running four restaurants, like you have a lot going on in your head, your plate is full.
Yep.
So
no, I can only speak for myself directly, but certainly operate with greater confidence, less anxiety. Thanks to the clarity of having a plan. And I, speaking to my team, I think they also appreciate the clarity of understanding what's the priority, how do their roles uh, kind of contribute to the overall success of the company or our mission.
That's amazing. So your plan is not only for yourself, of course, it's for your team, but it impacts your team and how they feel. It sounds like it. Their motivation levels and all of
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And I think because we're in such, despite some of us working remotely at times, we're still in, daily contact with a
Right.
daily meeting. Um, we all kind of remain on track and are able to identify quite quickly when things are going off track, which I think
Mm,
um, can be very frustrating for colleagues. To feel that their performance is suffering or they're not getting the traction that they're looking for. We're kind of all in it together, doing our
right.
best to help one another, supporting each other in achieving, everyone's various
Right.
priorities.
Picking up on the point you just mentioned, how do you measure progress or success in today's days? Like some KPIs, key performance indicators, or incentives, or any numbers you're tracking that you could share with us that
Sure.
show you that are you making progress with the steps according to your plan?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, our PPP window closed at the end of September. So cash became this, kind of singular focus, and it ultimately has remained a singular focus. So that's something that we track at this point on a weekly basis.
Wow.
Is to understand, the cash flow of the business in detail, and how various management decisions are affecting cash positively or negatively. Um, Beyond that, each kind of team have their own sort of performance metrics. Whether it's, the operations team are obviously very focused on guest feedback.
Okay.
Um, so we're, tracking that on a daily basis. The kind of promotion team may be tracking the success, efficacy of various promotions, whether it's, trying to get new customers on Seamless or other, promotions. What's working, what's not. Let's edit what's not working and double down on
Right.
what is working.
Right.
To personnel, and that's something that um, we've been focused obviously on managing labor cost. Um, that's been the primary focus of the HR team,
Mm-hmm.
um, and will remain obviously as sales decline heading into the winter. So guest feedback, labor management, obviously cash flow, sales. Um, Obviously, everyone likes following sales. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
That's amazing that one of your uh, key performance indicators or the way you measure success is guest feedback. A lot of people say, yes, we should do it, but very few people do it and then actually track it. It's amazing. So, moving on to the next part of your planning. So, first is the decision to have a plan. How am I going to plan? What goes into the plan? The next is how am I going to measure the performance? And the third part is um, did you go through any process or system of documenting the plan so that you could maybe share it with others? And if you'd like to just share some parts of the plan, if you're open to it and comfortable, um, you know, did you go
sure.
ahead and yeah, so that people listening can just learn like how do you plan and your decision making strategies.
Right. I mean, I'll take a stab. I don't know if
Okay.
it's helpful or not, but we definitely, start with the P&L. Obviously, our head of marketing really builds up the sales plan in great detail. So we start with the granular, average check by meal period, number of covers by meal period, any off-premise or other, revenue on a daily basis, weekly basis, rolls up to your month. And then we get into the costs and, um, we, I guess one, you know, note is that, there's somebody responsible for every line on the P&L.
That's
Uh,
amazing. Can you repeat that again, Carlos, so
I mean,
everyone can?
there's one, excuse me, there's one name next to each line on the P&L. Obviously, many times that name repeats. People are responsible for more than one thing, but ultimately there's not two people responsible for a single line, only one person. So I think that that's helpful clarity. I think that's probably something that we've adopted since the spring, that kind of clarity. And yeah, I mean, we really expand, as we are doing these monthly plans, we're really looking into each line of the P&L, and how can we improve performance. So, if it's realizing that our guest feedback scores are not high enough, we need to invest in training. Who's responsible for training? How can we, invest in this and see a return in the following month?
So it sounds like you put the plan in place, you know how to measure your success with your key performance indicators, and then you know who's doing what. And that sounds like it translates to what do you need to do to increase revenues, whether that's training. I am going to shoot a few things and tell me if I'm on track, or correct me. Maybe it's where to invest and where not to invest currently. Maybe it has to do with understanding what needs to stay on as a cost and not stay on at a cost at this time. And more strategic way of decision making that translates down to the bottom line. What is
Sure.
that something?
Yeah, I mean, it's a structured approach. It's helpful. Just starting with a blank piece of paper, we would never remember all the aspects of the business that need to do consideration. So it's probably not perfect, but it's pretty comprehensive. Has you thinking about all aspects of the business, and prompts, improvements.
And so it's not only what you need to do in the month, from what it sounds like, it's what each member in your company needs to focus on in the month. Their steps that
Very
come together to increase revenues.
Yep.
Right. So it's just not a financial plan, it's a strategic plan. And then it is a step-by-step, what does everyone need to do and focus on. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I'm going to ask you a very important part of planning is everyone, people like to have plans, right? Then they have a plan, and then they forget that it's important to analyze how your plan went. How did it go? Did the month go as per the plan? If not, why? And so do you have any mechanism to analyze and learn from each month to do better in the next month? Can you share what you did, and how did this lead to gaining more clarity on increasing revenues the next month?
Certainly. So again, having the monthly meeting, is
When you say monthly meeting, you mean you meet once a month?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll meet the first Wednesday. We operate fiscal calendar, so I don't know. Tomorrow is the first month of our November.
Right.
So we have our monthly meeting tomorrow morning, several hours, and we will, obviously review October performance. Can't remember what month it is these days. So we'll review October performance versus our October plan. Everything is, reviewed in comparison to what did we say we're going to do. Fortunately, again, the weather, especially weekend weather in October, was tremendous. So we kind of hit it out of the park, which is great. I feel like this is going to be the end of the good weather, so we're going to enjoy some positive results while they last. But that's the process is once a month to sit down and compare actual results against the forecast or against the budget, and to review. I mean, not every aspect of the business was as successful in October as we'd like. So delivery remains a disappointment, for lack of a better term. And we've run a number of promotions through the month, and we'll get the full briefing tomorrow as to how things really went. But we'll spend a portion of that meeting really digging into what went wrong or what didn't work, and how do we correct course going forward.
So do you mentioned delivery is one section that you look at. I'm sure you look at indoor and outdoor dining. What are the other parts of the monthly plan? What else do you guys discuss that's beneficial to analyze and then understand the next steps for the next month on how to make more money?
Sure. I mean, as I've mentioned, we track, guest feedback. So that's going to be something we consider. We're going to review the P&L to see, how our expenses managed in relation to sales, in relation to, our plan. Ultimately, what was the effect on cash flow? How was cash managed? We'll look at kind of our employee or personnel update. What was retention like? How well did we manage our schedules to avoid wasteful spending, such as overtime and spread of hours? How did we do with our COVID screenings, keeping our staff safe, keeping our guests safe? Kind of the list goes on and on, little details.
Right.
There are incentive programs for managers and line staff. Kind of which teams won the COVID prize, or which team won the sales prize, or how did each of the teams do? Were there any standout performers among the line staff of the 100 or so staff that we have on board? Who needs special recognition? Who needs special coaching? So
That's amazing.
Try and rip through each aspect of the business, and it's a newer ritual for us. Typically, we were kind of quarterly and annual. I mean, and the quarterly, was we invested a fair amount in, but given COVID, we didn't feel that quarterly was so productive. Monthly made a lot more sense. And I think we'll just continue this habit, irrespective of our ability to see into the future.
Right. So when you say that, will you stop making a quarterly plan?
No. I think we're going to start making a quarterly plan, or a more robust quarterly plan going forward, as some of the dust has settled a little bit. And we're working on our 2021 plan right now. So, we recognize that that's going to be highly, flawed in terms of, predicting what will happen with occupancy, COVID and sales. So, but we figure, let's put something together. Let's get our kind of our heads together to determine, what really is the priority, for next year.
Right. So from what I'm understanding is you're making a yearly plan, but you still have a quarterly plan of 90 days. And then you have 3-month plans, individual 30-day plans, which you analyze and assess once a month.
Yep. And then we take it further, obviously you have a weekly meeting, right? So, you have 4 or 5 weekly meetings in a month that add up per month. And we have a daily huddle. So
that's amazing.
The daily huddle obviously speaks to day-to-day tactical performance. Weekly, similar sort of check-in, and then monthly you can think a little bit more strategically. Obviously, quarterly and annually a lot bigger picture.
So before I move on, I just want, what you just said made so much sense. You said I have a yearly plan, then you broke it up into 4 quarters. And then you broke a quarter into 3 months, and then you broke each month into 4 weeks, and then you broke a week into 7 days. And every day you're meeting your team to reiterate your priorities, talk about the daily plan, what do you need to do to reach your revenue goals, the steps they need to take, daily analysis of their own key performance indicators and metrics, but all aligned back to your monthly plan, that's aligned to your quarterly plan, that's aligned to your yearly plan to increase revenues. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing, Carlos. Thank you for sharing what you do inside to make Casanella so successful. Thanks. I'm going to have you on again for Q&A in a few minutes. Thank you, Carlos. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'd like to invite Basu Ratnam. Basu is very good looking and owns an amazing chain of restaurants. I will let Basu introduce his restaurants, but thank you, Basu, for coming on.
Thank you, Nandu, for having me, and the compliment. Can take all the wins we can get in this environment. As Nandu mentioned, I founded Inde Restaurants. We're Indian-inspired, fast casual chain of restaurants. We have 4 in the city. 3 of them are open right now. We opened our first one at the end of 2015, and before COVID hit, we had a couple more in the pipeline, and that we were going to be opening in the city as well, and sort of put some of those plans on hold. We're moving forward with some of them, so we're in an interesting position of in the midst of a growth cycle, but also trying to manage the day-to-day cash flow and sort of disruption as best as possible. So it's certainly been an interesting and challenging time.
Right, and you just opened one more.
That's right. Yeah, we opened a restaurant in the beginning of October.
That's amazing.
Sure was.
I've eaten your food. I love it. As an Indian, I can tell you that it's authentic American-inspired food that tastes really good, and I could eat it every day.
Thank you. That's our tagline.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. Before we proceed, Basu, I just want to recap this amazing conversation we had with Carlos and then lead it into you so you can add more value. We spoke about 4 takeaways.
Mm-hmm.
Before I state the 4 takeaways, the biggest thing that we are taking away today is that if we want to increase revenues during these uncertain times, we need to have a plan. And planning your revenues, planning your costs, planning your steps, gaining clarity is so important because you got to lead your people with you. You're not doing everything alone as an owner. You have to have it documented. So the 4 steps that we took away from Carlos was have a detailed financial plan, even if you aren't sure what the future will look like, so that at least you can move in that direction. Stop shooting arrows in the dark, and understand what are the steps you need to take. Once you're clear about all of that, be very clear as to how you're going to measure your success and progress. So what are the metrics you're going to analyze? What are the metrics you're going to keep an eye on that are COVID relevant, that show progress towards increasing revenues? The third one was document the exact steps so that you can communicate those steps to the entire team to increase revenues. And the fourth was analyze and learn how to improve your aim on meeting your revenue targets every month. Because what's the point of having a plan and then not going back and seeing how was the plan? Did it work? If not, why didn't it work? What could we have done better? And how can we use that learning to do better the next month? Now, all of this is all great and important, but there's one missing part that comes in planning is a lot of people have a plan and then do not communicate the plan. Mm-hmm. Or don't know how to communicate the plan, or assume that people will understand the plan, or here's my plan, go make it happen. And it doesn't work like that. And so after talking with you, I learned what you do, and it's amazing. And thank you for sharing today. If you don't mind sharing with us, you have this amazing, clear, simple, effective way to communicate your plan to increase revenues. And I want you to talk about that. But before that, since it involves people who are emotional, who are smart, who are a mixed bag of everything beautiful, COVID has changed the game in how we feel, how we approach work, how we go to work, our fears. Are we going to keep our jobs or not? And all of that is now a part of this mix. And all of that keeps, now you got to manage and help an employee remain motivated, not just on work level, it's on a personal level. Because when they go home, some are depressed, it's hard. And so the good and the bad, how do you see the role of your employees today vis-a-vis before COVID?
It's a great question. I think you touched on a lot of points that I think are really important, and every sort of operator that's on this call can empathize with. I think pre-COVID, running restaurants was difficult for a number of reasons, whether it was rising labor costs, delivery commissions, rents, et cetera. And now, not only are we operators, but it feels like we also are having to, be kind of food safety experts. We have to be, medical experts. We have to be employers of record. We need to also be, counselors in some regards, dealing with multiple, citywide organizations that we've never dealt with before or never had to deal with in the same level. So, it's enormously complex, and it's not a one-person job. And I think the way we've looked at this in our company is, first and foremost, job titles as they once stood beforehand are no longer as relevant anymore. Certainly on certain levels, it still exists, but we've had to sort of break apart the way that we've staffed our restaurants, the way that the field office has thought about different roles, and we've had to really sort of think about in levels of priority what's most important, what do we need to get through the day, what do we need to get through the week, what do we need to get through the month. And I think there's been so much confusion and disinformation on how to what safety requirements and protocols we should be measuring. So I think really looking after your team, having simple and effective communication, figuring out, the ways in which you can do little things. Everyone's strapped for cash and resources, but the little things that you can do to make sure your team feels safe and comfortable and they know kind of what the plan needs to look like, I think is extraordinarily helpful. And so to answer your question, I think our role, my people have become even more important to me than ever before, because, they help us not only sort of run the restaurants, but also take care of these different sort of shifting situations that can change every day. But at the same time, we don't rely on people as much for their job title anymore, as much as they do for their kind of role within the company that's been, that's being defined on a monthly basis.
That's amazing. To reach that clarity is amazing. To move away from how things were done to the new normal, because COVID's not going anywhere, right? None of us really know how long this is going to go on for, at least definitely for the next 6-8 months, with the cold season coming in. And this is the new normal. And I think what I'm taking away from what you just said is, this is not going anywhere. The old way is not working. I need to look at things differently. The way I run my restaurant business needs to change and look at things differently. And in looking at things differently, let's move away from the roles-based job performance to an individual's job performance. That's amazing. So you mentioned that you have this planning, the daily and monthly. And how do you go about communicating your financial and strategic plan to your employees? Is there a particular process you use that you can share with us?
Sure. It's not so dissimilar from what Carlos was describing. I think he said something I agree with, that even looking out towards the quarter might not be as useful as it once was, given how much is changing. And we find ourselves making decisions that we would have agonized over, for months, oftentimes on a weekly basis. We're making decisions in hours sometimes that really can impact our business. And so we found the most effective horizon to look at the world is on a monthly basis. And we break our months up into a fiscal calendar, so it's 4 weeks, 5 weeks per quarter, and we start planning. So for us, the last week of October is this week, and I've already started putting together November's plan for the month. We've started including our key people, and that's both kind of, we have some corporate employees, but we also have some store level employees. We've included both of them in the process of planning for what November is. And the thing that I think has been most useful is, you can put a P&L in front of someone and say, these are the numbers and these are the goals, and that often doesn't mean much. But if you take the time, and it doesn't take that much time, it just takes patience and discipline to sort of break down whether it's a revenue number or if it's a cost number or if it's a percentage, and really sort of trying to get it to the most granular level that is helpful for the team, and sort of communicate your goals in that way so that they know how their daily functions can influence that number. That's when you create a sense of alignment. And I found that more than anything, just saying, you know, our goal is to do X number of dollars of revenue for the month, that's not really useful. But what we've found is sort of having that clarity, and then having that clarity in terms of coming up with a granular number matched back to someone's daily responsibilities. That's where we can create a sense of alignment, empowerment, change, and accountability.
So doing this every day, this communication rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
how does this help in keeping your employees motivated? Because that's a challenge today, right? So
For sure.
bigger than ever.
So going back to the monthly planning, you know, just to start there, when you start breaking things out and say this is where we want to be for the next month, for the month of November, and you look for the buy-in, and you look for people that you think are actually influencing the outcome of the restaurant. When you get them engaged on that level, I think you start to see a sense of ownership, and then you can actually have that conversation with them on a daily basis.
Amazing.
Just put numbers in front of someone, and then you ask them about those numbers. If they weren't a part of creating that, I think, you know, it's frustrating for you and it's frustrating for them. And so I think the first part of it is setting a strategic plan and then getting input from the people that are going to be responsible for executing. And then
sorry, go ahead, Vasu.
In terms of having a daily rhythm, I found, and you know, this came from just sort of looking like how do businesses, how do companies, how do organizations react in times of crisis? And it always starts, you know, even in war, you have a daily huddle where you have a couple of key things that you find it to be extremely important for the key decision makers in your company to just get aligned and on the same page. And as I mentioned earlier, there are decisions that we take that we would take, you know, months to have decided that get decided on sometimes on an hourly basis. And so having that morning check-in where we start the day, we set the tone for the day, we go over kind of any tactical needs that any of the restaurants need to get through, and then we always loop back to, you know, what is a monthly objective, what's the priority for the business, and what can I do, you know, as my team's employer, what can I do to help them and break apart where they're stuck.
Do you get any pushback?
Yeah, definitely. I think for better or worse, our teams, and I think this is probably like most people's operators, are very habit driven, and they're used to looking at the world a certain way. And so when we introduced this idea of a daily check-in for 15 minutes, we said it'll be exactly 15 minutes at the beginning of service. We got tons of pushback. You know, there was, this interferes with us getting ready. We don't have time. We don't have anyone to cover our shifts. You know, it's too loud in the restaurant. And, you know, we also got pushback in terms of having people be accountable for a daily number that they were reporting on. You know, people thought it was like a firing squad.
Right.
And, you know, so there's always going to be resistance, I think, to change. But what we've found is, like I said before about getting people involved in the budget process or the strategic process, by including people in this level of sort of decision making with the business, you start to see who's really in it, you know, in your company, because they want to see you win. They want to help be a part of a forward momentum, versus people that are just looking for a job, or people that just aren't sort of motivated to be part of the solution. And so we definitely got pushed back, but it's my job, if I'm implementing something new, to hear that out and make sure that our teams understand what and why we're doing it.
Thanks,
and I think, you know, it's been helpful.
Thank you. Now I got 2 minutes before we jump into Q&A, because we want to answer a few good questions that have come through. Some really good questions. So I got 2 questions, got 1 minute each.
Sure.
Without the plan and communication system, I know it's a big question, but you got a minute to share with us. Without the plan and communication system that you have in place, what did business and life look like? And today, what does it look like?
The first time we I set a monthly goal when we reopened our restaurants in April. We were off by, you know, almost 100%. And I spent a month agonizing every minute of every day why we were off by 100%. And it was something that took over kind of my whole mindset, my psyche, sense of confidence. It spilled into my personal life. And not that there still isn't a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety, but I think recommitting to a plan, getting my team involved with the plan, adjusting the expectations to what we were hearing, what we thought was achievable, what helped us from a cash position, and getting that daily alignment and accountability with our whole team. It helped me feel like I was doing the best that I could to actually get to where we wanted to go. And, I think Carlos mentioned this earlier, we're optimists in the long term, but in the short term, when we're coming up with plans, I've become a little bit of a pessimist. And I push my team to understand what are all the hurdles that we're going to hit, and how do we prevent them, and how do we think past them. And I feel like once you get people into this problem solving mode, it can make us feel like as an organization, we're trying to do the best we can.
Super. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Basu. So one last question, really quickly. Can you share one thing our experienced audience can do to have more control over increasing revenues today? Just one. What would it be?
A, have a plan. But B, break that plan down to as small a number of units and as actionable and digestible as units can be for the people that are going to be responsible for executing on the plan.
When you say units, you mean days? Or
whatever it is. So if it's growing sales, which I imagine is most people's plan right now, think about what the channels are, how many, if it's how many covers or transactions, and who are the people responsible for actually influencing that. So we're fast casual, we have cashiers. Our cashiers know the goal and they know the average check. And we report on that every day.
Thank you, Basu. Thanks, Basu. Sorry to cut you short, just want to keep some time for Q&A. Thank you everyone for your patience. We've got 8 minutes left and some amazing questions that have come through. Let's go with the first question. To increase revenues, you have your steps, but with everything changing so much, does it still benefit to have a detailed financial plan and documented steps? That's our first question. Any one of you can take it, whoever wants to go for it. Just remember, we've got to keep it quick because we got to close in 8 minutes. Carlos or Basu, anyone?
Carlos, go for it.
Carlos?
Sure. The question is, does it still make sense to have a financial plan, even given the lack of certainty?
Yeah, does it still make sense to have a detailed financial plan and documented steps, despite the financial, what's happening with COVID and the uncertainty?
Yeah, 100%. You've still got to give it your best shot. And, we're all operating with limited visibility, but, we have to make a call. Yep.
Thank you. Carlos, this question comes specifically for you. Carlos, do you see your revenues going up with having this details and financial plan and the steps?
So the short answer is yes, but it's hard to say whether our sales are going up more to do with great weather or the hard work of the management team and the teams on the ground. So, obviously the last few months we've benefited from outdoor dining and great outdoor weather. So sales have been very positive, and coincidentally, we've implemented a lot of these disciplines over the last few months. So it's perhaps too early to say, but we all feel very good about the work that we're doing, giving our operations teams more support to do the work that they do. So we're going to continue to do it, even as sales decline, as they naturally will over the winter.
Right. Just to stick on this point for a little longer. Personally, I'm sure it's hard, right? You have a plan, you've communicated the plan, and you're hoping for things to improve. And there's this itch to want to change the plan in the middle of the month, or oh, was it right? Was it wrong? Should I change it around? Have you ever had that happened to you, or the itch to do it, or you've stuck like, no, this is my plan for the month and this is what we're going to do? And
Yeah, I mean, fortunately to this point, we've not run. I mean, I'm sure if in March of this year, if we had a plan for March and then COVID happened, we would have had to kind of abandon the initial plan and come up with a new way forward. But so far, nothing so dramatic has taken place as to cause us to abandon a monthly plan. In fact, while at times, certain aspects of the plan may prove particularly challenging, it may just, require more work, and it may not be accomplished that month. And, it just may remain on the agenda to
Right.
accomplish in the following month.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlos. Basu, this question is addressed to you. Basu, how can I be more open with my team without fearing what my employees think, considering we might have to let go of a handful in winter? It's kind of a general question. We've got like a minute and a half.
I think at the end of the day, the recognition that, even if you're an employer, you're in a position to hire and terminate, understanding this is a very human industry, human role. We're all dealing with our own sets of stress levels, anxiety, priorities, etc. And I think, there's nothing about that suggests that we can't be open, vulnerable, and honest with our teams. I think, in fact, if you are clear in communicating the priorities for the business, the priorities that you have for each individual employee, it actually makes that, and the reasons why those are the priorities, it makes having conversations around termination, promotion, opening or closing restaurants a lot more easy to have, as opposed to if you're running the restaurant like a black box.
Thank you. Thank you to the two of you amazing people. Please go eat at Carlos and Basu's restaurants. The food is amazing. Thank you, Carlos, and thank you, Basu. Thank you for sharing everything so openly. Thanks a lot. Please stay on. We got 2 more minutes. Derek, just give me a minute. I just want to summarize 5 steps. Have a plan. Know how you're going to measure it. How you're going to measure your performance. Document the steps. Communicate the plan. And then analyze it every month. And you'll stop shooting arrows in the dark. You'll gain more clarity of the next steps you need to do to increase revenues. And you're going to make more money. So before I say goodbye and pass it on to Derek, in order for you to get traction to increase revenues, it's your people who are going to do everything to make it happen. So use your heart a bit, not only just your head. What will it take to make them feel calm, safe, loved, appreciated, acknowledged, and valued at this time? And they'll give back tenfolds and help you increase revenues. Thank you very much. I'll pass it on to Derek.
Thank you, Nandu, very much. Your leadership and experience that you offer to the community is inspirational and sort of aligned with sort of our mission here at NYCHE, sort of give back as a resource, sort of with the knowledge that we have as professionals. And want to also thank Carlos and Basu for being a primary source and sort of sharing their experiences and insights in terms of what's worked for them and their teams. And to sort of echo and reinforce Nandu's sort of action items is to sort of have a plan for success and put that plan into action. So I also want to thank the NYCHE educational team and all the people that are responsible for putting these events together. And of course, I want to thank the audience. Your time is extremely valuable and we appreciate you being here. And these events do not happen without your feedback. So thank you all. It was great to see you this afternoon. I put our website in the chat if you'd like to stay connected and get to know some of our members and be in touch with our future events. Thank you all so much. We look forward to seeing you next time.